Real Virginia is proudly produced by the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. For almost a century, Farm Bureau has been a friend of the farm for all Virginians. Visit our website at vafb.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Real Virginia, a show about Virginia agriculture and the people who produce the wonderful local products we enjoy. Brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Here's what's coming up on the program this week. Some Virginia young farmers have been working to save farmland in their community. Gardeners who want to preserve their crops this summer should start planning now. And we have some fun visiting a skid steer rodeo in the Shenandoah Valley.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia.
Welcome back to Real Virginia, everyone. We're coming to you this week from Bowen's Farm in Brunswick County, where collards like these are part of Chef Tammy's recipe this week. First, Loudoun County Farm Bureau members are meeting with local leaders in an effort to preserve valuable farmland in their Northern Virginia community. Norm Hyde reports it's an uphill battle.
Growing up in urban Fairfax, Virginia, Sierra Principe never expected to find her calling in the farms of nearby Loudoun County.
We are growing food for people's families, and I love that. I loved working with my body. I loved doing something that was really productive in the sense that my work was producing something physical, tangible, and necessary. Loudoun County has some excellent soils and climates for growing. You can grow veggies, you can grow grains, livestock, hay, grapes, all sorts of stuff. And it really could be that Loudoun County could be a breadbasket for the wider DC area, but we have to preserve our soils. Right now, the value of land is really high because people are sort of moving out from the DC area. The development companies are buying up land as fast as they can, and they're building houses as fast as they can out here. So what we're trying to do is make it a requirement that they save 75% of the prime agricultural soils on any development.
Loudoun County is one of the fastest growing communities in the state. The Loudoun County Farm Bureau, which put forth a local zoning amendment called the Prime Soils Initiative, says it would allow new housing developments to grow while also preserving one of the county's greatest natural resources.
When we divide a piece of land, 100 acres say, into a cluster subdivision, like we talked about, the land that is preserved, that has to be set aside, has to include the prime agricultural soils that are so abundant in this region and key for growing absolutely anything from cattle to tomatoes. That has to be set aside first. And then you can use the remaining parcel of land to put your houses. That's all it does. It doesn't restrict, and actually we've crafted it so that it doesn't impact density. It doesn't impact the yield of lots that developers will get off of there. All it does is say you have to put the prime soils into an agricultural preservation lot first, whether you put a house on it or not.
We are losing farmland really fast compared to the rest of the country. So by saving it now, it will preserve the possibility of that land being farmed. Otherwise, the soil will just be bulldozed, paved over, completely ruined for any future agricultural purpose.
Loudoun County actually has a higher concentration of prime agricultural soils than any other region in the state of Virginia. We have so many it's amazing soil. It can grow absolutely anything. We're losing it because besides being amazing to grow crops in, it's also extremely cost effective to drop drain fields in. So when they do cluster subdivisions, it is the place they go to first to put houses. So we're losing it very, very rapidly. Standard operating procedure is to take a parcel, drop the houses on the prime soils, and then set aside the rocky, wooded, steep slopes and get bonus density in exchange for nothing that's farmable. So fixing that imbalance. And then if we don't save these soils, they're gone forever.
The local lobbying effort has been led by the Farm Bureau's Young Farmers and began in earnest a year ago with a panel discussion with the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. The outreach effort has been recognized by the American Farm Bureau Federation as an innovative way to tackle the difficult question of preserving farmland in fast-growing communities.
In the pandemic, we saw grocery store shelves go empty, but our local farms and our local farm stores still had food on the shelves. And as we go into an era where climate change and the globalization that allowed the COVID-19 pandemic to spread so quickly, those sorts of crises, I believe, will happen more and more often, and I think it would be wise as a region, as a county, to preserve farming, to support farming, so that we have stronger local farm food security. And it's really hard to convince local government that that should be a priority.
It needs to be tackled from both the state and the local level completely. We are a Dillon rule state, which means our localities cannot do anything in their policies that exceed what is allowed by Richmond. So Maryland, for example, has, I believe it's close to 16 policies focused on ag preservation and the transition of older farms to new owners, with incentives, with programs to help even bringing money to the table on closing costs on a property. A lot of those we can't use in Virginia and in Loudoun because Richmond doesn't have legislation on them.
Farm Bureau members say the Prime Soils Initiative is about more than protecting farmland. It's also about preserving a local food supply for Loudoun County residents.
That is something that our consumers in eastern Loudoun and Fairfax and beyond are looking for. So we have that right here, as long as we can stay here and maintain it. West of Route 15, you suddenly step into the country, and it's amazing, and we've managed to maintain it this long, but now we've really hit a point where the development pressure is making that hard work. We're going to have to put in place policies that help us maintain it, whether that's putting in place a PDR program would be fantastic, encouraging easements, or just through the zoning policy, putting our money where our mouth is to support agricultural operations.
Loudoun County has just completed a 4-year process of updating the county's zoning ordinances. Young farmers plan to continue their efforts to preserve as much farmland as possible in their community. Reporting from Richmond, Virginia, I'm Norm Hyde. Virginia farmers saw development pressures accelerate in the 20th century when the automobile and suburbs became popular. Here in the Old Dominion, there are several state and local programs designed to help landowners keep rural property in agriculture. Some communities have areas specifically zoned only for farming or forestry. Other Virginia communities have programs where landowners can put their property into permanent easement programs on a case-by-case basis. There's also a state fund to help a few localities preserve farmland by purchasing the development rights on certain parcels. All of these programs require the approval of local government.
Hi, today we're going to be talking about preserving food from your garden from the ground up.
Farming is a rewarding way of life, but it can also be full of challenges. If you or someone you know is struggling, call or text the AgriStress helpline at 833-897-2473. It offers 24/7 access to professionals who can support someone in need and help find mental health services in your community. Please make the call, because healthy farms depend on healthy farm families. That's 833-897-2474.
If you're looking to preserve your garden goodies this year, the first step is to decide which crops to grow and then which methods to use. Chris Mullins with Virginia Cooperative Extension has some ideas for you from the ground up.
Well, hello and welcome. Today we're in Culpeper County, Virginia. We're here with Lena the Win. Lena, what kind of place are we in here? We're going to be talking about food preservation today. And what kind of place are we in here right now?
So we are at the Carver Food Enterprise Center, and this is a shared use commercial kitchen. So that means that businesses that are just starting out or growing can rent this space out by the hour. So we have currently a lot of caterers and food trucks that operate their business out of this space. And in the near future, we hope to do co-packing too. So if you've never heard the term co-packing, what that might look like is a farmer who has a bunch of tomatoes, they're not sure what to do with them, they could bring them to us, we would make sauce out of them, put them in jars, put their own, farmer's label on it, and then they could sell them as they see fit.
What a great service. Well, just like those farmers, sometimes gardeners will have too many tomatoes, too many beans. And so I'm getting asked a lot, what do I do with those excess? How do I preserve the food? And I think you've got some ideas about that.
So there's two different types of canning, and both of these are different types of canners. So this is a boiling water bath canner. This you would use with foods that have an acidity of 4.6 pH or lower. And then this would be for your low acid foods. So any vegetable generally or meats that have a pH higher than 4.6. So this is a great beginner canning method. This is kind of the more advanced canning method and a little bit more risky. Okay. And then also right here we have a home dehydrator. These are pretty inexpensive, about $40, and it's a pretty easy way to preserve foods, and it also makes them shelf stable, which is great if you're trying to put away a lot of vegetables and fruits for the year.
So what would you do, what's an example of something you might do in here that?
Yeah, you can dehydrate pretty much anything. A lot of people like to dehydrate fruits as snacks. Some people make fruit leathers. One of my favorite things to do when I have a lot of tomatoes is actually make tomato leathers. And they're kind of like a vegetable wrap that you can use in lieu of bread or your tortilla as you're making a sandwich wrap. And so what you would do is you'd make a puree out of your tomatoes. I usually put some onion and some garlic. Sometimes I put some nuts or some flaxseed just to boost the nutritional content. And then you pour it on this little tray, and then you put it in your dehydrator. You turn it on for whatever time and temperature the recipe calls for, and just let it do its thing. And then once it's done, it just peels right off, and you can cut it up into a wrap shape and make sandwiches with it.
Oh, that is awesome. A different way, because a lot of people probably have seen or maybe tried canning. This is kind of interesting, kind of different. So how would somebody find recipes and things to do to make this safe?
The sources that you want to go to find a safe, validated recipe is any cooperative extension site. All of those recipes are going to be validated. And by that, I mean it's something that was developed in a lab. They've tested to make sure that process is actually going to produce a safe product. Two other sources are this book called So Easy to Preserve. And that's produced out of the Cooperative Extension Service in Georgia. And then your Ball Blue Book is also a great source for canning recipes. These are, of course, the folks that make the very popular mason jars.
So some of the growers, they need to think about maybe what they're growing. Is that important when it comes to canning? And where would you find that information?
Yeah, definitely. So an example is any pickle recipe that calls for cucumbers is generally going to call for a pickling cucumber. So there's lots of different varieties out there that fit that mold, but you want to make sure you're using a pickling variety instead of some other kind of variety, because otherwise you're going to end up with soggy pickles. There's also some other tools you can use, like Pickle Crisp, that you add to your pickling brine, and that makes for a crisper pickle as well. For your tomato sauces, you want to make sure you're using aroma tomato or a paste tomato, because those are going to have a lot less water in them, a lot more pulp, and you're just going to have to use a lot fewer tomatoes to make your sauce.
Well, very good. Lena, thank you so much for talking to us today about food preservation. Some really neat ideas here, and I think home gardeners can really utilize some of this.
Thanks for having me.
So remember, this is important. This is the food that you're going to eat. You want to make sure it's safe. And Lena talked about these methods that you can find out about that are proven, they've been verified, and the recipes are good for you and your family. For From the Ground Up, I'm Chris Mullins. We'll see you next time.
From the Ground Up is presented with the generous advice and assistance of Virginia Cooperative Extension. Visit their website at ext.vt.edu.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley of the Green Kitchen. Coming up on Heart of the Home, creamed collard greens with a breadcrumb and sesame seed topping. We hope you'll stay with us.
Our cow, she walks into the barn and she gets milked. Milk's taken from her and put through a chiller. And that milk's taken from body temperature of a cow, which is about 102.5, and dropped to 35 degrees and put straight onto a tractor trailer. and it goes straight to the plant the next day. So most of the milk that's sitting on your store shelves is probably less than 48 hours old. And that's a pretty good testament to how efficient we are.
Virginia collards are a hardy cold weather crop and often one of the first local vegetables to be available in the spring. Chef Tammy Brawley shows us a delicious way to prepare them from the heart of the home.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen, and welcome to Heart of the Home. We have been cooking bacon. That's one of my favorite smells in the world. If you want to get anybody out of bed, just start cooking bacon. So what we've got here, we've got some cut bacon in our hot stock pan. It's not going to take very long to get started. And now all of a sudden you're asking yourself, what in the world are we cooking? We are doing creamed collard greens. Great recipe from Jason Alley. He's a chef here in Richmond. I love this recipe. And anytime you change the texture of anything, it changes the flavor. Greens in general are very high in vitamin C, very high in iron. They're great to use. But you can change the texture of this if you don't care for the flavor so much by adding cream. And that's what we're doing today. So we're going to make a bechamel sauce. But we're going to start with the bacon that we're cooking here. Move that around in our pan. All right, so our bacon is starting to crisp up very nicely, keeping in mind that it might not be totally done, but there's going to be a longer cook process with this. We're going to go ahead and add some minced onion to that. The onions are nice and finely minced, which is great. So they're already translucent, mixed in with that nice bacon grease. Now we're going to come back and add some flour. You want to get the bacon and the onions nice and coated. You're going to go ahead and add the stock. And then we're going to come back and add our greens. Now you can see this is a large bowl of greens. This is 2 pounds of collard greens. We actually cut the recipe in half for viewing purposes. Your recipe that you receive will actually say 4 pounds of greens. All right, and you can see a nice full pot there. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that they're not going to get cooked, but they are. These are going to cook down very quickly, and we'll come back and check them in just a moment. All right, now as you can see, our collard greens have cooked way, way down. They're getting nice and coated with that flour, and we still got the bacon grease and the onions, of course. And what I've done here is I've melted a little bit more butter in another saute pan, and we're going to basically create a bechamel sauce. So what I have here is butter that's melted. I'm going to add some flour to that. Basically, guys, when I say bechamel, that is flour and butter and some sort of cream. This is actually the basis for a roux or a gravy, which is technically the same thing. And then to the butter and the flour, you want to come back and add a combination of cream and milk. It's going to thicken up immediately, guys. You want to just kind of stir it a little bit as we go. Now, our milk and our cream are actually cold. You could technically warm them together and the process wouldn't take quite as long, but it's still going to come together very nicely here. You can see it's already starting to smooth out some. While we're letting that get thick, I'm actually going to come back over to the collard greens, stir those up again. And in all honesty, I'm actually going to turn this heat off. I think the greens are cooked perfectly fine. The bacon did finish cooking. Smells heavenly. Now, while that is thickening up, I'm going to go ahead and turn on another saute pan here. The reason I'm going to do that is I actually want to stir in some breadcrumbs and some sesame seed. All right, our bechamel is thickening up quite nicely. It's actually almost too much. So I'm going to go ahead and add that addition of cream that I kept over to the side. I'm going to thin it out just a little bit. Not going to take very long. And now you see the bechamel and how thick it is. That's actually totally fine. You could come back and maybe add more cream if I wanted to. But to this, I'm going to go ahead and add some cayenne pepper and some ground nutmeg. I love using ground nutmeg, especially in bechamel sauces. All right, the bechamels come together quite nicely. It can maybe even be a little thinner, but right now I think it's fine. I'm going to move that off the heat. Our other pan that we're going to toast the breadcrumbs and sesame seed in is ready. All I did was melt a little butter there. We're going to come back and add some panko breadcrumbs. Doesn't necessarily have to be panko, it can be any breadcrumb. And then some sesame seeds we're going to mix together. And all we're doing here, guys, is adding a little bit of butter texture to it. This is really added to your recipe for texture. I personally love crunch in any recipe, so this is really no exception. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move our collard greens to a serving bowl. I am not going to try to lift this heavy pan on camera because I can see what would happen. So I'm going to just go ahead and move the greens to the bowl. And what I'm going to do is come back and add some of the bechamel to that. And I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the bechamel to the greens in the pot. Now this got quite thick. I probably would take a moment to thin that out a little bit. If it's too thick for you, you can make that determination yourself. Stir that in the pot. Oh wow, that looks good. Stir it in the bowl. Our breadcrumbs and sesame seeds are doing quite well. And we're going to come back with our breadcrumb and sesame seed topping. Now I could dump the whole thing if I wanted to, but I know I have more in the pot, so I really don't want to do that right now. All right, there you have it. Creamed collard greens topped with a sesame seed and breadcrumb topping. I'm Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Join us next time on Heart of the Home.
Recipes from the Heart of the Home can be found on the Virginia Farm Bureau website at vafb.com/recipes, as well as on Chef Tammy Brawley's website at greenkitchenrichmond.com.
Collards are part of the brassica family of garden plants and are popular early spring and late fall vegetables. Along with their cousins broccoli, cabbage, and kale, they thrive in cooler temperatures close to freezing. After a spring crop matures, hot weather shuts them down, so growers usually replant collards in the summer for a late fall crop. Some Virginia growers have been able to raise collards and other cold crops almost year-round with the help of hoop houses, which trap the sun's warmth and prevent hard freezes. While collards are grown on more than 100 Virginia farms, they're also popular with backyard gardeners.
Skid steers are useful machines in agriculture, warehouse, and construction settings, but as Ricky Gibson reports, they're also a chance for farmers to have some fun.
There are no bucking broncos or bull riders here, but there's plenty of skill on display each winter at the Virginia Farm Show.
Every year at the show, one day we do a championship skid steer rodeo that the Virginia Farm Bureau has sponsored for years. It's a combination of seeing if they can beat their neighbor or their brother or their father in a timing, because it's just a skilled event. They get timed at it. They just love doing it. They get big trophies and they get some plaques or cash prizes. So some of that, but more of it's bragging rights to be the best skid steer operator.
I do it just for fun. I mean, I like a challenge, and yeah, it's fun to compete with the other guys too. See how we come in. We have 4 bobcats, and mainly run them on mulching, clearing, post pounders, bucket work for some grading and stuff like that. Yeah, the reason the skid steer is important to it is for the cuts down on man labor for one. Takes the place of extra hard work, extra hard lifting. You can use a machine to do it. Saves on manpower.
Skid steers were invented by 2 brothers in Minnesota in 1957 to make it easier to clean out their poultry houses. Their smaller size makes them more valuable in that role than even a small tractor. They've become an essential piece of equipment for dozens of agriculture and construction jobs, and manufacturers add more options every year.
They constantly are improving the controls, so to make it more user-friendly. See some of that kind of coming down from the big tractors. There's some big tractors here made by Fendt. Well, now if your kids are playing video games, they can hop in that cab there, and they're like, it's literally joystick controls for a tractor. So the skid steers have had that quite a while, but they're constantly improving that. They're improving their efficiency, and they have different sizes of them also based on your applications.
It's really important. Yeah, we do a lot of man labor too, but we pound posts with them, we lay out our posts with them, lay out our boards, we pull our wire with it, stretch our wire. It's, yeah, really hard to do without.
Skid steers are just one of dozens of mechanical attractions on display at the Virginia Farm Show. The annual event gives farmers from all over the state a chance to literally kick the tires of new equipment and stay current on new farm technology. It's also become quite a social event.
I call it also an old homes day because a lot of these farmers all know each other, and they might only see themselves once a year here. You know, you'll see them bunched in groups and just chatting and like, you know, catching up on the family and all that.
But things get serious when it comes to the skid steer competition.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it's also pretty nerve-wracking. You know, you got all your co-workers there watching you, and you know, we all were in the top 10, so it's like, man, am I going to be able to do it as fast as they did, you know? So that was the last one that did it out there of our company. So you're nervous in there, kind of sweating, hoping that you can do at least as good as them, you know?
A lot of it has to do with the, you're moving in and out or carrying stuff, you want to be pretty stable. You want to be able to do it fast and yet at the same time not lose it, not have it slide off your bucket, that kind of stuff as well.
There was a family, and I would say the father is probably in his 60s, so he's got some 40 and 30-year-old sons, and apparently he's spent a lot of time in a skid steer, and he's very good at it. And you know, he said, I think last year he said, I'm not going to compete anymore because the kids are upset with me because I keep bringing home the trophies or whatever. So I'll let them do it now, you know. But yeah, a lot of these guys all know each other.
This year, Ed Martin had the best time at the championship skid steer rodeo. He and other winners took home trophies and bragging rights until next year's competition. It's all in fun, but controlling a skid steer well is a valuable skill for these operators. So, if you want to try your hand at it next year,
come prepared.
Reporting in Augusta County, Virginia, I'm Ricky Gibson.
We're so glad you could join us this week to celebrate all the bounty Virginia has to offer. From your kitchen to your home and garden to our beautiful wide open spaces, we're proud to say that this is real Virginia. For everyone from the Virginia Farm Bureau, thanks for watching. Make it a great week.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia, home in my heart, oh.